The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a platform and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co. Since 1996, international brand consultant and trainer Kubi Springer has been working with companies and high-profile individuals to create, build, and grow their brands for commercial success. With a portfolio that expands over 20 years and includes the likes of Nike, L'Oreal, MTV, BlackBerry, Didi, Rio Ferdinand, Mobile Awards, Mercedes-Benz, Rolls-Royce Motor Cars, and the New York and London Fashion Weeks, Kubi has become synonymous of three words: she builds brands. My experience with Kubi is, well, we've worked together. She has been involved in some of the training programs that we have developed with The Best You, such as Turning Pro. But apart from that, she's just a force. She's a straightforward thinking, very bright lady that has phenomenal expertise when it comes down to branding. I thoroughly enjoyed this podcast, and apart from that, Kubi has spoken and shared panels at the Best You Expo, and she's always a great ambassador and supporter of the Best You, and I want to thank her, and I highly recommend you listen to the whole podcast because there's some really great golden nuggets in it. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Always, but Kubi, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm good. I'm excited as well.
I remember, Kubi, I think we sat down in a studio. It was quite a few years ago now. It was easily 4 years ago, maybe 5 even. I think it was probably 4 or 5 years. I had more hair. You had less hair. And but, you know, we're obviously... we're still here. We're still here, which is a good thing.
I think.
And I know that, you know, I've got your interview originally from the podcast, but I remember at that time you impressed me of how much knowledge and how much wisdom you had then, and the vast experience that you've got. And I've just seen you also. I've seen you personally as a brand obviously grow and evolve, and you're great at what you do. How would you summarize in your words what you do?
I would summarize that I assist individuals as well as organizations to shine a light on their brand that ultimately gets more people to pay them for what they do. I started my career, as you eloquently put, in consumer brand marketing with some really phenomenal brands, both here in the UK and the USA. But as the years have gone on, I've now got 23 years experience doing this. And as the years have gone on, in the latter part of my tenure, I've been focusing on personal branding and what does it look like when you are the brand, whether you're the leader of the organization or whether you sit within a Fortune 500 company. How does your personal brand impact the wider business that you're supporting, and how do you take that global? And so as a result, I have the joy now of kind of hopping to different parts of the world, teaching personal branding and global branding. And to put it into context, in a couple of weeks, I'm off to Morocco, and then I get back and I'm here for International Women's Month. And then I go to Jamaica, and I'm in New York, and I'm in LA. And so I kind of travel teaching people globally how to take their brands to the next level.
And you do a great job. I have to say that... Well, you've seen it, obviously. Now you've dealt and worked with, top brands around the world. But ultimately, for Joe Blogg or the smaller company, the individual that is obviously trying to stand out and make a dent in the world, the industry, and whatever it is that they're doing, a lot of people struggle with understanding or seeing themselves as brands. Don't you think?
They do, but I think we're in an era where, if you look at what's going on globally, whether it's Brexit here or the general gig economy that is emerging globally, people are now being forced to see themselves as brands. I have a saying, Bernardo, that you would have heard me say many a times, which is define your brand or the world will define it for you. And I think people are now recognizing that actually, if I don't start to be intentional with what my brand is, I might find myself in a place where I'm redundant and I don't know what to do next. And I haven't secured the sufficient network, so I haven't developed my online profile to be able to take me very quickly to get another job. And so whether you're in a company or whether you're in a company and you have a side hustle, or whether you're thinking about jumping from that corporate 9 to 5 and launching your own business, we're in the era now where you can't avoid not looking at your brand and saying, what do I stand for and how do I want to show up in the world?
Having been in London now, I came here for 3 years and it's 10 now. I'm still here. And I'm on my way, to spending a bit more time in the US, hopefully. And I'll talk about that because it's partly your fault. We were, what I have identified, and I know there's phenomenal brands in the UK, global brands. But I've got to say, from a point of view, as a promoter, someone that's putting these big events and we have 10, 12,000 people, 180 speakers, I struggle with people to understand their mindset of how small they think in the UK in comparison to the US. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I've been in a really privileged position because the early part of my career was working for, back then his name was Puffy, and then it moved to P. Diddy, and now he's Diddy. And I worked underneath his umbrella for about 3 years in New York City. And so I got to see the interesting juggernaut between the American focus and attention on branding and how we interpret it here in the UK. And I think what you generally find is that, first of all, because America's bigger, it means that your communities and pools of people are bigger. So the pools of people who think like you and I, Bernardo, is bigger by default of size. So it can appear as if there's more people who are thinking about branding and really developing their brand. But actually, I think if you were going to compare it, and give it a like for like in size, I think the ratio would probably be quite similar. There is always a small percent of people who are ambitious in comparison to the rest who are willing to maybe not step further. So that's the first thing I would say. America's bigger, so therefore it always appears that they're doing more and they're bigger at it, etc. But I think that there is a quietness that we have in the UK that's just part of our cultural makeup that is not as effervescent and is not as vibrant and is not as kind of salesy as it is in the States. But in the last 23 years, I've seen that change. When I look at the next generation of millennials, they are utilizing digital and they are unapologetic about saying, I run a business and I also work, or this is what my brand is. So I think it's changing, but I think there is a cultural difference, which is what makes it appear as if we're not doing it like the Americans, because we're not there.
Well, that's a really interesting point, actually, and you're quite right. Obviously, the size of the country does or will have an impact, and then quite rightly, maybe it is cultural as well. I just feel I'm just sometimes slightly disappointed on how small some people think, from a brand point of view, and how much time, money, effort, energy, investment you in yourself and in your brand in order to get to do what you're doing now. And what I believe is that we have to see ourselves as brands. And listen, I'm going to use a brand example with a brand expert, but I always say to my clients, I said, okay, if you were in the supermarket, where would you be? Would you be in the pound area, or would you be where the Moët Chandon and the Dom Perignon is? It's just because sometimes, that's what you are. And then it gets them thinking.
You can be in the pound area if that's your price points, but just make sure you're dominating the shelf space, right? So, And I agree with you. And one of the things, I've been privileged to just sign a book deal with Bloomsbury Publishers, which is the same publishers that do J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. And the title of my new book, which comes out this October, is called I Am My Brand. And one of the reasons why I was so keen to do this book is because I think, Bernardo, there are people who want to build their brands. I think that there is a real shift by default of the way the world is today. The fact that globalization has taken over, we do live in a gig economy, people are uncertain when it comes to things like Brexit. So I think there is a shift where people want to build their brands, but they don't necessarily know how to build their brands. They don't know what the tools are. You know, the amount of people who come to my workshops and they say, I want to go on LinkedIn, I want to utilize LinkedIn, but I'm not quite sure what I'm meant to do with it. Or, you know, I really do want to get that promotion, but I don't know what I stand for. Nobody's really given them the framework as individuals. So there's the frameworks out there as larger organizations. But, you know, if you look at Nike's strategy and then you think of yourself, you're like, well, I'm not Nike. I haven't got those zeros. I haven't got a big, you know, research development team behind me. So I think it's about the tools that need to be put in their hands to help them say, this is who I am. This is how I own it in my way. Whether you're British or American, this is how I own it in my way. This is how I show up authentically true to who I am. And this is how I commercialize my gifts and talents.
That's great advice. So your book is coming out when?
October the 3rd this year.
Oh, the 3rd?
Yes, the 3rd in the UK. And then it comes out on the 19th in the US.
Amazing. Well, listen, can't wait to see that. I'm sure it's going to be a great success. And now, Kubi, we've worked together. You've been training some of my clients in some of our training programs like Turning Pro and obviously talking about branding. How do you assist and help people and individuals? Because I know you do so many different kinds of things, but how do you help individuals for them to be able to get those skills and have that mindset? Because I know you focus a lot on mindset.
Yes, I do. So one of the first things that I say to individuals is I say, if you were a Coca-Cola that was giving me a brief, or you were a Nike that was giving me a brief, the first thing that I would do is the beginnings of the scientific process of branding. A lot of people put branding down as this creative, fluffy thing that we do, but actually brand marketing is more science than it is creativity. And there's a formula to building your brand. And so the very beginning of that formula is doing a brand audit. And so I say to people, let's audit your brand. And what that looks like is saying, first of all, an honest mirror to yourself. Where are you sitting at the moment? Where are you in the marketplace in comparison to your competitors? Who are your competitors? And there's different types of competitors. So I always tell people this story. When I started and I first moved to New York, there was the aspirational competitor. You know, I would look at somebody like an Oprah Winfrey, who was big in media, and somebody like a Sean Pitts, who was one of the biggest marketing gurus. They were aspirational competitors. Here I was, this 22-year-old. They were aspirational. It was where I wanted to go. Then there is your like-for-like competitor. So in my case, at that point, it was the fellow graduate student who was also broke trying to work this stuff out. They're my fellow competitors. And so you need to know who's the aspirational competitors in my marketplace, who it is that I'm trying to become like. You know, success leaves a footprint. Whose footprints am I trying to follow? And then who are my like-for-like competitors? And I say that you can learn a lot from your like-for-like competitors' failures as much as you can learn from your aspirational competitors' wins. And so once you know where you sit in the market, you can then start to gauge on what your brand needs to do. So, Bernardo, a lot of people say to me, well, I don't know what my brand essence is. I don't know what my brand stands for. And so there's a chart that I do with them called the VIA chart. And it's a kind of a round chart, and it's coming up in my book, and it talks about values, interests, and abilities. What are the values that underpin why you do what you do? What are the interests that you have, and what are your abilities? So someone might say, well, I want to build a brand because I love the music industry and I want to now be a performer, but yet their voice isn't that strong. Or they might say in your sector, you know, I want to be a yoga instructor because I like the wellness sector, but actually they don't really enjoy fitness. And so sometimes people are embarking on careers that don't match their VI chart because they haven't identified what are your values, what are your interests, and what are your abilities. And so I had a client come to me. She used to work in funding. She said, I'm going to skip funding. I hate funding. I don't want to work in it anymore. And she was working in government funding. And we did the VI chart. And what we actually established is that she was really interested in the music scene. She was a 40-year-old woman, loved the music scene, but she had 20 years experience in funding. So I said to her, what are the elements of funding that you still like? Oh, well, I still like this, and I still like that, and I still like the other. There was enough for her to stay in that industry. But what I said was, well, why don't you take your expertise in funding, your abilities, and move it into your area of interest? She then became the head of partnerships for Sony Music, and now she loves her career. So sometimes we need to start by saying, what is actually going on with my brand? What is it that I love? What am I capable of? What underpins why I do what I do, and then start to package based on our VI charts.
That's amazing. That's great advice. That's absolutely fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, if this is the first time you've heard Kubi, as you can see, she's a force on a webinar. Live, I can't even tell you. Seriously, the room goes quiet and everyone is just in awe of Kubi. She's amazing. And all these things, I know you teach them also in your academy and all the things that you do. Yeah?
Correct.
If you're interested in finding your true purpose, if you're interested in finding your legacy, if you're interested in growing, if you are sick and tired of reading books that don't help you, haven't helped you, or are not helping you, or attending courses and seminars that haven't really had an impact in your life, I invite you to read my book, The Question, Find Your True Purpose, out now. For more information, go to www.thequestion.co. If you're interested in working with me, contributing to the magazine, maybe speaking at any of our many events around the world, partnering or licensing The Best You, go to www.thebestyou.co. Well, I'm delighted I've got Kubi. So I was sharing the story briefly before about Kubi's partly to blame. I remember we went for lunch one day and we were talking about the Best You Expo. I think it was my second one. I don't know what it was. And I was saying, I'm thinking of going over to the US. And he said, I don't know what you're still doing here. What are you doing here? Why aren't you in the US yet? And he says, people love your brand. And I remember she poked me in the eye, and that was it. So I think it was like literally 3 months later or 2 months later, I had booked my venue for my first event in Long Beach in California. And the rest is all history.
I think, Bernardo, you're a classic example of hungry market versus saturated market. Sometimes people have a brilliant brand, whether it's their personal brand or their organizational brand, but it's not working where they are. And they can start to feel deflated and think, well, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my services. There's something wrong with my products. And most times it's not that. A lot of the times it's just that they're not operating in a hungry market. And a hungry market versus a saturated market is this. A hungry market is where there is a real appetite and a real need for what it is that your brand offers, versus a saturated market where there's either not a real appetite for it, there's not a burning need for it, or there's too many competitors that are already doing it. And so when I looked at you, I could see, well, you need to go where there's a real burning need. I mean, the next place I think you need to be heading to is Dubai, right? I'm going to poke you in the eye again and say, right, time's up. Let's head off to the Middle East. Because I think ultimately the world is small. So you need to go where the hungry markets are. People ask me all the time, Bernardo, why do you do so much work in emerging markets? I'm either in Malaysia or Indonesia or Dubai or, Ghana or Jamaica. And the reason being is because they're hungry markets. Somebody like me as a brand expert, there isn't as much competition, and therefore they pay me, double, triple, quadruple the amount I'll get in the UK. So go.
It sounds like a go to me. No, listen, that's great advice as well, and it makes absolute sense. And you're quite right. I think a lot of the times we tend to get frustrated. We keep on hammering, instead of looking at that hungry market. And listen, for me, it's worked. I've obviously known that people have fallen in love with the Best You over there. We're now opening our legacy clubs, which people it's just phenomenal. The response that I've managed to get there in 1 year. I have more contacts in LA in 14 months than I've had in 10 years here in London. And I'm talking people I can get on the phone, people I can meet for dinner, for lunch, because, it's just, they're passionate about this. And funny enough, I was having a conversation, and I'm leading towards the idea of going global, which again might be a big word for some people. But I was talking to a publisher the other day, because my book is actually coming out. I'm launching at the Expo, and The Question. And funny enough, he's a publisher to me. He says, listen, if you're getting your book out, let me tell you where the biggest English-speaking market is, where you have to go and promote your book. And I'm listening. I'm thinking, of course, it has to be North America. He says, India. He says, you take your book to India. And he says, you get your book into India. He says, you are done. His book, obviously, you've got like 1 billion people. Not all of them speak English. But, we're talking about, what, only 400 million of them? So kind of like,
It goes back to hungry markets. And it goes back to also when you do an audit on yourself, really appreciating, North America could technically be seen as a saturated market. But why I realize the best you would work is because of you, Bernardo. You're a male, the age demographic that you sit in, with a European background and English experience and an English accent. So, and you speak Spanish. So straight away, the components of what makes up your brand makes your differentiation in North America unique. And subsequently, it now becomes a hungry market. If I take myself, I'm a woman, I've just turned 40, I'm clearly black. And so when I look at this is where there is a hungry market for me, the doors are open. Globally, the doors are open. And so it's really about taking a step back and saying, the skills that I have, the person that I am, the attributes that I bring, the history that I come with, where will people really be dying for that and be willing to pay a premium? And that's where you go. You don't just struggle along in the UK because I was born in London. Who cares? Jump on a plane, go.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things you've got to admire with the Americans. I mean, I know, listen, it's a big country and you have to do that. So either you drive 16, 18 hours because you're going from one state to the other, or you jump in a plane for breakfast, you're in the East Coast, and then you're having dinner on the West Coast. And that's the name of the game. And that's kind of when we say, oh my God, I have to go up to Liverpool today. Excuse me. Or I have to go to the Eurostar to Paris for 2.5 hours. You're thinking, what are you complaining about? You really get that sense of, globalization of what it means to become a global brand being in the US. Now, what does global mean to you? Because again, I know we're all global. I'm putting a little post on Instagram. Someone's seeing it somewhere else in the world. But what does it mean to you?
Well, global means to me getting my offering into the hands of the people who need it most. And I think when we look at our brands from a place where our gifts and our talents are not for us, they are a service to enable somebody else to do something. When we actually start taking the I out of branding and putting the we in our personal brand, then global stops being scary and global stops being global, and it starts being, who can I help? Where do they need what I have to offer? And I think that the minute you do that, you become very clear on the markets that are relevant to you, because not every market is going to be relevant to your brand. The markets that are relevant to you are the markets that have the biggest pain point and desire for what it is that you have to offer, the way that you offer it. So you could be a yoga instructor and there could be 50,000 yoga instructors, but the way that you offer your particular gift and talent to the world, who needs that and where are they? So global for me isn't global at all. It's global. It's actually, how do I take what I do to markets locally around the world and interconnect them?
That's great advice as well. And why, I suppose it's more difficult. I mean, kids nowadays, millennials, 20-year-olds, obviously they're born with an iPad underneath their crib. But what is... A lot of people would probably struggle more, I suppose, kind of my age and kind of like, really taking advantage and using these platforms. And you see so many success stories of people that become, YouTubers or Instagram sensations pretty much overnight, or, like we are sometimes. So this happened overnight. Yeah, 10 years or 25 or 30 years overnight. But what's your thoughts on that and on how to stand out in social media and do something different?
I think the way to stand out on social media is firstly to be agile. I hear a lot of people say to me, Kubi, I tried this and it's no longer working. And I said, well, how long ago did you try that? And they say, about a year to 6 months. And I said, well, social media moves like water. Based on the algorithms, based on the way that these platforms are set up, they are designed to evolve and evolve quickly because they want to keep the end user's attention span. So in order for you to stand out on any of the social media platforms, you need to be agile, not just because you were using a particular hashtag last year, so now you're still expecting that hashtag to work. It doesn't happen like that. So I think the first thing that is important as a mindset change is the level of agility that you need to have with social and digital. It's not like traditional marketing. That's the first thing. The second thing with social media to stand out is to do more listening than you do talking. And I say this to people all the time. You need to use social as a platform to listen to your tribe. So if I take, for example, I go on Instagram Live normally every day, Monday to Thursday, okay? I have quite a big tribe community, probably about 11,000, 12,000 people on Instagram, and I'm on live every day. The reason why I do that is not because I'm an egomaniac and I just want to talk every day and not get paid, but because it's a platform to listen to what they need. It's a platform for me to say, you know what, guys, I'm thinking of doing this new book. What would you guys like to read about? And then they give me the book title. They give me the content of the book, and then I bring them on the journey as I'm writing the book. Oh, I've been writing this chapter. I've got writer's block here. What do you think about this? All of a sudden, the community is co-creating content with you. So then when you release that content, they buy. And they buy because they've got an invested interest, because they know they were part of the journey. They become brand ambassadors, sharing what you're doing with their tribes because they feel proud because they were part of that journey. What a lot of people do is they use social media like they use traditional media. They broadcast messages. And then they wonder why nobody cares. Nobody cares about your broadcast message. People care about conversations. People care about two-way dialogue. And so what I would say the biggest thing on social media is, number one, be agile. And number two, use it as a place to have conversations, not to broadcast messages.
Again, fantastic advice. And one of the things that I'm going to, we've been, it's not that I've discovered now. It's been a process, obviously, for years. But obviously being in and running events and working with so many great people like yourself, what I've identified very clearly is that you do need to surround yourself with the right people. You need to seek advice from the right people, be mentored, be coached. How important has that been to you? How important is it to people? Because, again, trying to do things alone, sometimes it's difficult. We don't have all the answers. We need, as you said, we need to have these conversations. What's your thoughts on that?
I think you can't do it alone. I heard somebody say the other day, I'm self-made. I said, nobody's self-made. Like, it's the most ridiculous, pompous statement I've ever.
What about his mum? Did his mum not have anything to do with it?
Like, nobody's self-made. So I think that you need to be unafraid to ask for help. And I think you need tiers of support. You need peer-to-peer support, so people who are on the same journey as you, going through the same pain points that you do on a day-to-day basis, that you can offload to, and they can offload to you, and you can just support each other. So you need peer-to-peer support. And I would say for me, I've always looked at having people like yourself who are peer-to-peer support, who I'll just call up and say maybe once a quarter or twice a year, hey, let's go out for dinner, let's go out for a drink. And it's just bounce ideas as peers to peers. But then you also need people who are a few steps ahead of you. And I have noticed there is a trend to people trying to get, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different coaches. That is unnecessary. Find 1 or 2 people who believe in your dream, who understand where you're going, who have probably walked that journey themselves, and then utilize their expertise for a period of time before you then move on to the next person. And then the last thing you need is somebody who is hungrier than you are. In my team, I always have young people because they're hungry. They're full of life. They're full of zest. And they bring fresh ideas in a way that I'm not even thinking. They're the ones that have said to me, Cube, you need to jump on Instagram every single day. I was like, every day? Like, that sounds tiring. And they were like, no, trust us. Go on every day. Talk to the community. Bounce ideas. It's going to work. And actually they were right. Of course, you need to put it into your sales funnel so that you can convert it, but they were right. So I think you can't do it alone. Anybody who tells you that they've done it alone is lying, and you need the 3 tiers of support.
If you're interested in watching the video content of this interview and many others, or interested in learning from world leaders and teachers, go to www.thebestyou.online.
Yeah. And I'm going to add on to that. And don't be afraid to drop some people along the journey, because, there are people that are going to drag you down and if you're having conversations with people that you know maybe 25 years ago, and you're trying to change, transform, grow, evolve, people like to be comfortable, and sometimes for them to stay comfortable, they need to make sure that you don't necessarily change. So just don't be scared to drop some friends and unfortunately some family along the way. You can only see them in Christmas. That's okay, and just move on.
Absolutely, and also compartmentalize people. So I had a little dinner at my house the other day, and it was the celebration of the book signing. Most of my family, my outer family in particular, are not entrepreneurial. I am, my husband is, my 6-year-old daughter is, but some of my cousins aren't, some of my aunts are. Does it mean I drop them out? No, they still pay a part to pay. If I'm in London and I just want somewhere to go and rest my head and not talk about business, I go there. That's still adding to the fuel for me to get up the next day to fire on. So I think just recognize who's in your life and what they're in there for. Not everybody's going to be able to do the strategy with you. Some people are just there to say, you know what, you can do it. Some people, their negativity is the fuel for you to do it. I have someone who's super negative. I keep them at a distance, but God, they fuel me. They just fuel me.
All right. Well, Kubi, I'm delighted you're going to come to the expo finally, and you're going to be sharing some ideas there. I know you've seen kind of the journey of what we do and the Best You and the Best You Expo. Why do you think an event like that, where we've got 150 speakers, we've got like a couple of hundred exhibitors, and 8, 10, 12, 15,000 people. I don't know how many people are going to show up. Why do you think an event like that? How does it help you? How would it help you, not only personally, but as a professional?
I think the expo, first of all, what you have created is phenomenal. And I think that people don't always appreciate how much hard work and dedication it takes to build what you have built. So I super admire you, and I have done for a long time.
Thank you.
I think it's needed because it creates a safe place for people to do exactly what we've been talking about on this webinar, which is to connect with their peers, to gain ideas and fresh ideas on things that are happening, to identify what their aspirational competitors are doing and how they've done it. You've got someone like Marissa Pearce who's going to be on your speaking roster. Marissa's phenomenal. If you're starting out and you go to the Best You Expo and you hear her, she's definitely going to give you the roadmaps to how she's achieved. So I think it's important because I think it's about connectivity, and I think it's about having a safe place to be able to say, this is what I'm trying, what do you think? And naturally, by default of the size, it's a brilliant place to be able to listen to what the audience wants and then also to promote what you have.
Yeah, thank you. And amen. Yes, not a lot of people appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this. I mean, for me, it's been a phenomenal journey. It's been extremely challenging along the way. I share this story, but I was in an interview in the US, and we were off. We weren't live. We weren't on air yet. And this lady asked me, says, "Well, I'm going to ask you why do you do? Why have you done the expo?" And I said, to be honest, I have no idea where I've done it. And she looked at me shocked. I was just trying a dry sense of humor. She said, no, you can't answer. You can't say that. That wasn't the accent, by the way. She said, no, you can't say that. I said, I'm only joking. I said, I don't know why I do it because it's so much work, but I do know why I do it because I love it. And because I love the buzz and the energy when everyone comes in there. One of the things, and I'm not necessarily talking about this because of my book, but I have come to the conclusion, because the title of my book is the question, Find Your True Purpose. And ultimately, I believe that what you do is help people find their purpose. I believe that. Okay, there's a lot of experts out there that might help them to rank better on social media or find love or whatever they may be. But you, particularly with what you do with branding, is you help people find their purpose. And I believe that finding your purpose is ultimately what I believe we're all about. I mean, why am I here? What am I doing? So these are the questions that came through my book. The question is helping people find their true purpose, because I haven't come across someone who is, every person that I've met that has a purpose, has a mission, they're all happy. I'm saying they're living a fulfilled life because they know what they're doing. They know where they're going. And people that are either overweight, moody, angry, upset, whatever it is because they don't really know what they want or what they do or where they're going, what their purpose is. What do you think?
Well, I think purpose is less about you and more about other people. And I think a lot of the times people think that purpose is about us. I want to do this. I believe I've got this. I, me. And when I teach branding, whether it's corporates or personal branding, the only way that branding works is when you recognize that your purpose is about others. The reason why people who have found their purpose are more happy is because they are every single day serving others. And when you serve others, you think about in a relationship, when you serve your husband or serve your wife or serve your partner, the smile on their face gives you great gratification. So when you bring that into a business context, I say to people, your purpose is not for you. Your purpose is how it impacts other people. So the true question is the way that you find your purpose, because I don't believe it's lost. I think it's actually given to us the minute we're born. I have an exercise where you track key points in your life from the minute you're under 10 right up until you're 65 plus. And when you start tracking those activities, let's take, for example, if you're 40 years old, and I say, what are all the moments where you had real great joy? Under 10, under 20, under 30, and now up to your 40. List all those moments where you had real great joy. And there is a real trend in what gives you joy because the joy is connected to your purpose. My job then with branding is about how do you then package that purpose for people to then buy it and say yes to it. But Bernardo, you're absolutely right. Until you find your purpose, and you can't find your purpose until you say, what is it that the world needs that I can give them? So I'll take myself as an example, okay? I do brand marketing on the surface, but what I really do is I say to people, you need to be unapologetic to shine. You need to be unapologetic about stepping into your spotlight. That's what I enable people to do, is to step into their spotlight. The way that I do that is through, brand strategies, brand audits, pestles, social media analysis, etc. But really the core what I'm doing is giving you permission to step into your spotlight and to show you how to do that. So that's not about me, but it is about me. It's about me because I need to be courageous enough to step into my own spotlight so that I can get the bumps and the bruises along the way to teach you then how to step into your own spotlight. So the minute you recognize that your purpose is about other people, the minute you then pluck up the courage to say, how do I make it so that I'm prepared to do it? So now I know how to show others to do it. Because ultimately, that's all we're here to do. We're here to live out our own truth so that we can say to people, this is how I bumped my head along the journey. By the way, don't bump your head that way. That's all we're meant to do, is live out our own truth so that we give permission for others to live out their truths. And most people are just scared to live out their truth.
They absolutely are. And listen, I think that's it. We both agree on the same thing, is by identifying and helping people find their purpose, which is of serving others. That's what gives you, and being, I love that about being unapologetic about it. Yeah. For me, what's happened, and I've been on a really interesting journey since July last year, where I was finishing writing the book, and it had a personal impact in myself because the book has thousands of questions. So I'm asking myself the bloody questions as I'm writing down the questions. So it just triggered all sorts of things in me. And when I was creating this idea of the book, The Question, then I started, and I'm a great believer in serendipity. I don't know if I've shared this story before, but I was reading for the third time Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I was listening to the chapter of masterminds. And again, I was writing down networks and there it was. He's actually reading. I was listening to an audiobook, so it was there. And what it came to is it came to ultimately the idea of what I've created now, which is legacy clubs. So the legacy clubs, and this is why people are just excited about it, is because they believe in the same idea. Okay, so if I can find my purpose, or the sooner I can find my purpose, ultimately then I can start serving. And then if I start serving and I start understanding that everything that I am doing, everything that I'm generating, everything that I'm creating, every word, every sentence, every book, everything is part of my legacy, then I have that responsibility of knowing that I'm going to leave this planet and I have been able to help and make a difference, because I think that's why we do what we do. What are we doing? We're doing it because we want to make a difference.
Absolutely. And I would even say that sometimes you might be on the journey, and a lot of people, when they come to my masterclasses, what they say to me, Bernardo, is, I can't do it yet. I can't do it yet. And I say, just take the first step. You may not know the whole picture. So I take myself on my journey. As you know, I started off as a dancer, right? I went to the Royal Academy of Classical Ballet when I was under the age of 18, and double pirouettes was my thing. I thought I was going to be a classical dancer. I then got an injury on tour with the Spice Girls, as you know, injured my knee, dance was over, and I thought my life was lost. What then happened was I then did an internship and I started working in marketing, and I was working behind the scenes. But what began to become apparent to me is every time I would go back in front of the camera and maybe teach somebody or go to a school and do a speaking engagement, that's where my light really shined. And so it took me years to get to the place where I realized, actually, you really are meant to be on stage. Like, okay, you're no longer double pirouetting, but you're meant to be on stage. And so a lot of people, what happens is they stop taking the steps because they want the excuse of, I haven't found my purpose. Or they want the excuse of, I tried it and it didn't work. Our job is to just keep taking the steps, because the more you take the steps, the more life reveals itself. The more life reveals itself, the more you reveal yourself to yourself. And then you get those moments that you got, which is, oh, shoot, that's what I'm meant to be doing. And you're never going to discover it if you stay at home watching Netflix and chilling.
Yeah. And what you're doing now is you're helping people and teaching people how to do the double and triple pirouettes. That's what you're doing now.
Absolutely. We're the big alpha.
Well, boys and girls, as you can see, I think we could carry on talking forever. This has been a masterclass of branding. I've got to say, it's just lovely talking to you, Kubi. I think you're great. I think you're amazing. And I'm just delighted to have you coming to the expo, delighted to know you, have you on my phone book. And listen, I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Okay?
Oh, thank you for having me.
And best of luck with your book, and we'll do everything we can to help you. So make sure you tell us, so we share it with the tribe.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, darling. Take care. All the best. Lots of love. Bye. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for watching today. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. See you soon. All the best. Bye.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.